Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Heat Check podcast. I am John Devine. With me is Anthony Chang. As we started last week's free agency, there was all this hope. Who knows what could happen? Who knows who could be moved where? And we have ended up pretty much with Duncan Robinson for Simone Fontecchio. So why don't we get into it, try and talk about what the plans are. We'll let Anthony kind of read the tea leaves. We'll also, of course, cite the great Barry Jackson. We will try and figure out what's going on as we're about to enter Summer League play. So, first and foremost, Duncan Robinson, they got up under that contract, and in return, they got Simone Fontecchio. What does that mean, actually?
It means there haven't been significant changes this offseason to the roster, right?
But Bam in his exit interview said there's going to be a lot of changes.
Yeah, the man with the silver hair. Look, it's like Pat Riley said with that quote, the quote that's now been spread throughout the last few weeks just because it got Heat fans excited that, there has to be changes. But Pat also said, but you have to be, you can't, it's not, players aren't just going to come to you. You have to make moves. And the Heat have tried to make moves. They continue to try to make moves and make trades. They have not agreed to anything. Obviously, they went after Kevin Durant. They didn't want to, trade the farm for him. They've explored trades for Andrew Wiggins. They've explored trades for Terry Rozier. Nothing has come to fruition. So right now you have 13 of the 15 players from last year back. The only two ones, like you said, are Simone Fontecchio and Kasper Sakuchonis, the first-round pick. And the two out are Alec Burks and Duncan Robinson. So it depends on the first-round pick. Cass is, how he plays, but probably got worse, right? Because Duncan Robinson was your best shooter, made your offense better, was a rotation player, at some points a starter, and you lose him for Simone Fontecchio, who's also a good shooter, but not as good as Duncan Robinson, and who knows if he'll even be in the rotation. So in the short term, they've probably taken a little bit of a step back. Big picture-wise, as I said, Barry Jackson, we're going to cite him. He had a story yesterday about the kind of the long-term plan of the organization. And it's pretty clear they're going to lean young, right? They have, I think, 7 players, 25 years old or younger. They're going to play their young guys because why not, right? See what you have, try to develop them. And in the meantime, if a star becomes available in the trade market, they're going to try to pounce like they always do, right? And try to make a deal and add a star level player to this team. I think there are flaws with that plan right now, right? We can go over that later, but that's kind of where things stand right now. I know Heat fans aren't happy because they wanted more change, right? From a team that was historically humiliated in the playoffs by 144 points, the most lopsided playoff series ever in NBA history. And they're pretty much bringing the same roster back.
So I'm looking at this team. We're talking about it. We're leaning into youth. You've got some older guys on this team. I know you need to provide some leadership and everything, but if you're going to go young, then go young. Look, I'm looking at the Lakers, for example. The way it works out, all of a sudden DeAndre Ayton is showing up, and he's on that squad. You've got your buddy Dame Lillard, who was just cut. Yes, I understand that, he popped his Achilles, probably will miss the entire season. But there are, I guess, opportunities out there, but it depends on what kind of team you want to have or what you're going to have. If he comes back at the end of the regular season, Lillard, and he provides a boost and all of a sudden he can give you something, that's great. But I don't think the Heat's going to be in a position where you're going, hey, you know what, we're not fighting for the play-in, we're fighting for, home court for the first round or something, and we're definitely in and locked in and can experiment.
Yeah, look, I don't think this team is – look, right now, JD, I don't know if you would agree with me, but I can only think of 3 teams in the East, like definitely worse than the Heat right now, which is kind of sad to say, right? Washington, Brooklyn, and Charlotte. I can't say Toronto is under the Heat at this point. Like, they got Brandon Ingram. Ingram's healthy. They have Scotty Barnes. They have RJ Barrett. They re-signed Podol or gave him an extension. They have some talent. This is a team not, when you had Jimmy Butler and you went after Damian Lillard, that's one thing, right? You were coming off a finals run. You were 3 wins away from a championship. This team is far from a championship. Is Damian Lillard coming off an Achilles injury at 35, 36 years old, who he himself wants to win a championship, right? He's never won one in his career. Is that the right match? I'm not sure. Obviously, it's fun to think about. There's obviously been mutual interest in the past. He'd help this team. But right now, and this is why I think the plan is a little flawed by the Heat, if this is, the kind of the plan they're thinking of long term. If Giannis becomes available, right, tomorrow, the Heat don't have enough assets to trade for a star like that. There are other teams better positioned with more picks, more young talent to go after that type of star. So in order for the Heat to get this star that they want, you're either going to have to be really bad and have a top pick in the draft or get lucky in the lottery. Or you're going to have to be patient, collect assets, whether that's trading players for picks, getting back bad money, but getting picks in return, developing your young players into maybe a Khalil Ware who does become an attractive piece in a trade. But just going for it and being another play-in team and being the 8 or 7 seed again, that's probably the worst case scenario for this team right now, in my opinion. I think that's the worst case scenario because you're really going nowhere. You're just stuck in the middle.
Well, the middle is about where they look like they are right now. Here's the wild card. Here's what makes me nervous. The Eastern you can theoretically this coming season win the East and still be so flawed that you have no hope at the championship.
Sure.
Because the Pacers are going to have a real problem because Halliburton's out for the year pretty much. The Celtics, and you see they've dropped salary on top of the fact that Jason Tatum won't be there. So they are not going to be the same. If you ask me, gun to my head, will these guys make the playoffs? Yes. But if you're telling me, are they a championship contender? No. And you have the Knicks they're close to getting a coach, but what has Mike Brown really done to get you from conference finals to the step to get into the finals? I mean, yes, I know he had LeBron with him, but let's be honest, LeBron orchestrated a whole lot of that stuff at that time. We should all have that problem. But it's like, you look, even the top East contenders are flawed to the point where even people are like, hey, you may want to watch for the Hawks this year. It's like, come on, really? And where if you put these guys in the West, they would be so far. So I say this because, look, the Heat had 2 finals appearances in past 5 years, which sounds great on paper. But you looked at it, and when they were in the bubble, even then, it was like, okay, it was against the Lakers, against a driven LeBron, a driven Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
They were focused. They were outmanned a little bit. And you had injuries. Okay, the second one, same thing. They were injured as well. So you see those, but going in, it was kind of a long shot to win it. So I think whoever wins the East this coming year is the same thing. And do you really want to say, hey, let's run it back because we think we can make incremental improvements within the roster? I don't think that's the case. So it's like either blow it up. Look, maybe you get someone like Ace Bailey who goes, I only want to play in Miami and I'm going to try and rig the lottery system so I can do it. But someone like Danny Ainge is going to go, I don't care what you think. I'm going to draft you anyway. So it's just it's hard. I mean, let's just be honest, Heat fans. It's a tough road. They've done stranger things when they pulled off and they got, Alonzo Mourning and they got Tim Hardaway and those things. At the time, that was it was amazing how they got out of that. Look, they did it with Jimmy Butler. It looked like they were in purgatory then and they got out of it. The only difference is the CBA is different. You have the first apron, you have the second apron, you go over it, all of a sudden, the matching salaries. It's very, very complicated. Now, you hope Andy Ellisberg is back there in his room with his abacus and, and his computer, and he's tapping away. But, people, I don't know, people want to give that argument, the game's passed them by. No, the game continues to change. And as long as the game continues to change, it's on everybody to find those loopholes.
People point to the Shaq trade in 2005, I guess it was, 2004. They give up Caron Butler, Lamar Odom, Brian Grant, Eddie Jones, I believe. So they traded some of the young players. There were no stars in that package.
Right.
But Caron Butler was a top 10 pick, right? And
so was Lamar Odom. Not our top 10 pick.
Right, but so was Lamar Odom. You need top picks. You need top talent like that. And also, it was a different NBA, to your point. I think there was only 1 first-round pick in that deal that they gave the Lakers. That doesn't happen these days. What did Desmond Bain just go for? 4 or 5 first-round picks? I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but that's the way it is.
And
the Heat right
Desmond
now,
Bane is a decent player. Look, he's a fine player. I think he's going to help the Magic a lot.
for sure.
A fine player. Mikal Bridges for the Knicks last year, a fine player. But you're telling me 4 and 5 first-round picks for these guys?
Right.
That's a lot. Now, I'm assuming the Orlando Magic is gambling. Look, those 4 or 5 picks, if they're in the late 20s, so what? Don't care. And we have a very young team. The Knicks had an older team, but it's still the same argument. But it's like, come on. I think if we extrapolated it out and we looked, that number 1 pick that was Cooper Flagg, at one point, the Heat had that pick, yes? If you go back in time.
If they would have missed the playoffs this year and lost in the play-in, they technically would have had almost all the same number combinations in the lottery as Dallas, and Dallas won it. They got Cooper Flagg.
Right. So
that's what needs to happen to the Heat. They need to get lucky in the lottery, but they need to be in the lottery first, right?
Right. Exactly.
That's the first step. So it is tough because you used to be able to get cap space and sign guys in free agency, sign stars in free agency. Now that's not the case. Like we've talked about many times. Stars don't hit free agency. There's too much incentive for them to sign these big extensions with their own teams, and then maybe they force a trade like Dame did, like Kevin Durant kind of did, right? Like other players have done in the past. But that's not as easy as dealing with the player and their agent. Now you're dealing with another team that wants a bunch of assets in return for that player, and you have to have the necessary assets to pull that deal off. So this, like, just going for it and not caring about assets and just trying to win at all costs, it sounds good and it's admirable, but in today's NBA, it's just not really a sustainable formula that works. It just isn't. So I think we're starting to see the Heat kind of shift their philosophy with this, like, this looks like it's going to be a gap year, right? But it has to be a gap year. It can't be Terry Rozier and Kevin Love playing ahead of all these young players. That would be contradicting what this season should be. The young players should be getting a long leash to make mistakes, to learn, for you to learn about them. And if you lose, you lose, right? Like we've said, I think worst case scenario is they are 500 again and they just lose in the first round. That's not really accomplishing anything. If you lose, you have your pick. You make that pick. Maybe you get lucky in the lottery to get a top 10 pick, and maybe you get elite talent that way. But this continuing to be in the play-in every year, it's not going to work. This is not working out for them.
And look, when we were talking about giving away these 4 and 5, first-round picks and everything, there's one other part of this chain that we always forget about. When you get those picks, you have to hit on those picks. I mean, We're looking at the Nets. The Nets had 5 first-round picks this year. Yeah. And it's like, okay, well, now let's see, what did you get from it?
Right.
To the Heat's credit, the Heat has been hitting on their picks. They have maximized what they've had at those slots. So you kind of hope, look, before it was, hey, we're going to get stuff through free agency, we're going to get stuff through trades. That was their strong point. Player development has always been their strong point. But actually picking the right players has actually worked out for them.
Oh yeah, that saved them. That has saved them. Getting Bam and Tyler at those spots and hitting on those picks. And without that, imagine where they would be right now.
And those are not easy places to nail down rotation players and starters.
Right.
When you're in the teens even top 10, you get 8, 9, 10. Even then, it's almost a crapshoot. Davion Mitchell was the number 9 pick. And it took him a little while to flourish. Here, of course, because that's what the Heat does. But you can pick at 8. You can pick at number 8 and 9 and still end up wiping out. So just because you get a first-round pick or you get multiple first-round picks doesn't necessarily mean that's your path unless, it's a top 5 pick, top 3 pick.
And here's the issue, too, is, after Bam and Tyler, their first-round picks have been 20th, 27th, 18th, and 15th. Yeah, right. Could you get a star and get lucky and get like a Kawhi or a Jokic in the second round? Yeah, I guess so. But if you're playing the odds, that's not going to happen. You're not going to get that elite young player at those slots that are necessary to go after Giannis, right? That would intrigue 29 other teams in the league. Like, that's why, they want to lean on their young core, and they really believe in their young core. And I do think there are good players in that young core. I mean, Jovic, Hawkins has shown potential near the down year. Khalil Ware, there's a lot of upside. He probably has the most upside out of all the young guys in the roster, other than the Caspers who they just picked. But are any of them going to be future All-Stars? I don't think anybody can say that with conviction. I don't think that's a sure thing at all. I actually think if you had to bet one way or the other, you would think probably not. I don't think any of them will be future All-Stars. So it's just tough when you're building around a young core like OKC. That's one thing. When you're building around a young core like OKC, that's one thing. But the Heat doesn't have that type of young core right now.
Okay, so if you're picking one, I know we're saying no All-Stars, but if you're picking one, who do you think has the potential for most growth out of the young core?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt Khalil Ware has the most upside, and he has a chance to be a starting center. And people would say Kasparov, he's 19. I just haven't seen him play yet, so I can't say, right? I mean, obviously there's potential there. He was projected to be a lottery pick by many people, but I haven't even seen him play a summer league game. So it's hard to tell. But I would say Khalil Ware, what we saw last year, if he can develop the three-point shot, if he can continue to improve on defense, work on his body, add strength, he has the physical tools to be a dominant player in the league. So I would definitely point to him. And he just turned 21. It's not like he's a 23, 24-year-old 5-year college player. He's young still. So he's the guy, really, and that's why you saw the Heat draw the line at Khalil Ware, really, of like, we're not including Khalil Ware in a Kevin Durant trade because he's the one with the most upside. And if a big star does become available in his prime, he's one of the first guys any team would ask for.
I'm going to go off. I agree with Ware, but I think the true X factor may be Jovic. And here's why I say that, because the NBA is all about matchups.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, what is he, 6'10", 6'11"? I think the wild card with him is, and we're always talking about this, and we're hoping, Jacku Jonas can do it, the first-round pick, with pick and rolls and everything. But I think Jovic's ability to see the floor, to get people involved and facilitate at that height. If you're 6'11", you're seeing over most people anyway. He already had great chemistry, and we saw this. He had great chemistry with Ware on lobs and rolling to the basket. He has three-point range as well. I think the X factor of it, the guy who may be the widest variance of what can be achieved, would be him. I think, he could put, not all-star level, but he can push himself up to a starting level where he is the matchup problem. They know where is going to be a problem. Like where you know what you hope to see from it. You know what Bam is going to give you at this point. As he continues to evolve and hopefully shoots better from three-point range, you know what Tyler Hero is going to give you or what his strengths and weaknesses are. Jovic's strengths have not played out yet. Some of it's injury, some of it's, but I think if you have a six, and also I think Spo also, to me, it felt like the first couple of seasons, they really tried to put him as more of a traditional big, well, today's traditional big, than, even playing him a little on the wing, like a stretch 4 or stretch 3. I think they have evolved to his strong points as well, and some of it's just availability. And I think he could help, and if not, I think he could be a willing trade piece. If not, so I think his growth is going to be key to what they do moving forward.
No, that's a good point. And yeah, I think some of it is injury, right? He hasn't been available as much as other guys to really see what he can do on a sustained basis and role. Like you said, like they've been trying about different roles. He was started the season as a starter. Then he moved completely out of the rotation last season after some, poor play early in the year. And then he was their sixth man, but then he broke his hands. And so it's just been kind of an up and down start to his career. But you see the flashes. I mean, when he's able to stay healthy and be in the rotation for a consistent stretch, he has a lot of value. And he's young still, like you said, to your point. I think 22 years old. His three-point shot has gotten better. His defense has gotten better. He's added strength and muscle. He's a really good passer. He likes to push the pace, which this team needs. Just a good connector, which this team doesn't have a lot of, which is why the first-round pick should help. He's a guy who gets off the ball quick and, like we said, is a good passer, skilled passer. He makes good reads. So, yeah, I think there's value there for sure. I think ideally he probably is your sixth man, right? Like coming off the bench, a change of pace guy because of the way he plays is so different than other guys in the roster. And we'll see. Like, this is going to be a big year for him because, like we said, I think they are going to lean on the young guys a lot. I don't think you're going to see Jovic out of the rotation much this year. He's going to be in the rotation if he's healthy. So I think we'll have a much better read what he could do after the season. And I think that's kind of the point of the season, right? What do you have in these guys? Are they finished products? No. But what do you have? What can they do? What are their strengths and weaknesses? What can they do together? That's going to be the ultimate goal, while also building them up to, not saying you want to trade them, but if you do need to trade them, they're assets and not, they're positive assets and not negative assets by the end of the season.
I think you also want to see what you have that overlaps and what duplicates. So, for example, we're talking like Pelle Larsson. If we looked at last year and we were getting ready to go into Summer League, we knew it was intriguing and everything. But by the time he came out of Summer League, we have Spo talk. We have Spo talking about this is a rotational guy for us. If you have two guys doing the same thing, I don't think it's a great secret that if they can get rid of Rozier, they would. The real good news is that it's an expiring contract. And if they can facilitate a Wiggins deal to get flexibility, they would. But okay, you still want to play this season, and you still want. And I'm sure Spo still wants certain characteristics from certain. He believes in positionless basketball, but you still need a certain number of people who can drive to the hole. You still need people who can read the pick and roll. You still need defenders. You still need pure jump shooters. So I think it's almost like having a big Excel spreadsheet and going through, okay, who can rim protect? 1, 2, 3, 4. Who can do this? So that he knows when it's time to pull a trigger that they're not looking through to see who do we replace. We had a little bit of that last year after Jimmy, but that situation was so crazy. But you see, it took them a little while to really find their footing with what they had, because you were integrating someone like Wiggins into the fold. You're trying to see, okay, what he plays defense and, how he plays defense. Some people play straight man-to-man better. Some people can play a pick and roll. Some people can't play pick and roll defense to save their life. Some people understand the concepts of a zone. It's all of those things. And if he has 13 out of 15, continuity is good for a coach, in my opinion. Look, I'm by no stretch an expert, but continuity is good so he knows what he wants to achieve. He wants to put people in the right place to maximize. And after that, then it's up to the player. But that's the crazy thing about it. I think there is something positive for 13 out of 15. It's not going to result in more wins. It's not going to result in, home court in the first round. It's not going to resort in that. But if they can pull a trigger, and when they pull a trigger on a trade, move something in that's kind of seamless and they can integrate quickly, then it's a bonus for them.
Sometimes those are the most fun years, right, as a fan. Like seeing a young core develop and grow together and maybe surprise people, right? It reminds me kind of Dwayne's rookie year when it was like him, Lamar Odom, Eddie Jones, Brian Grant, and like that team that I think it started like 0-6, 0-7. I think some people were saying it was one of the worst teams in NBA history. And they make it to the playoffs. And they win a first-round series against, I think it was then the New Orleans Hornets, right, against Baron Davis, and that that famous Dwayne Wade game-winning shot, I think in game one of that series.
Was that the one with the purple guy too?
No, that was late in Dwayne's career.
Okay.
That was late. Yeah, that was different. That was
Shot in the purple shirt.
Yeah, that was. But and then they go against the Pacers and Jermaine O'Neal and Ron Artest and that team, and yeah, they lose that series, but it was a fun series, hard-fought series, and then from there you build, right? You make the trade for Shaq, and so maybe that does happen this year. But that you had a guy in Dwayne who was a future superstar, the best player in franchise history. Does this team have that? Yeah, it has Bam, it has Tyler, it has a good foundation there, but do they have that transcendent star who could just carry a team to a championship? That's the big question. I don't know if they do, right? We haven't seen that yet. So, yes, this could be a fun year for a lot of reasons. But right now, I think I can't quibble with fans who are like, what is this? We just lost by 144 points in the playoffs. We had a bad record. We're on a 10-game losing streak after Jimmy left. And we're bringing back this team, maybe worse because we lose Duncan Robinson. I get it. But as someone told me with the Heat, it's still early in the offseason, even though free agency is kind of dried up, there is still room for trades. Trades can still happen. I would not be surprised if there's a trade before the season. trade doesn't have to happen in July. It can happen in August. It can happen in September. There's still a long way to go before training camp. So, is this the roster that they're going to take into training camp? I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if there are changes before then.
Okay, so we were talking about Pelle Larsson and where he kind of really gave, he kind of stood up and everyone took notice, and that was Summer League. With 13 out of these 15 spots accounted for from last year and the two newcomers, what can we expect from Summer League? Is there anybody do they have any chance of, I guess they could do Exhibit 10 contracts or they can do, two-way players. But is there anyone of note that we should keep an eye on this roster, or is it too early to tell?
JD, bring some more energy. Defending Summer League champions. I mean, they are going for a repeat back-to-back championships.
So you were telling me the only thing that means less than the in-season tournament.
Hey,
that was the only two things I could think of.
That was a fun run last year. No, yes, they don't have as many roster spots to fill, obviously, but I think the main draw of Summer League this year is you basically have it's kind of sad, but a third of your NBA roster on the Summer League team, right? You have Khalil Ware. Big things will be expected of him. He'll be expected to dominate right in Summer League this year. Pelle Larsson, we've touched on. Kashad Johnson, who just had a salary guaranteed by the Heat and is going to be on the standard roster and probably going to get more playing time this year. And then Kasparis, who we haven't seen yet. That's going to be the most intriguing thing. So 4 guys out of the 15 are on the roster, plus Vlad Golden, who I know a lot of South Florida sports fans are familiar with. Spent 3 years at FAU, was their starting center when they made it to the Final Four a few years ago. He's the Heat's two-way guy. Their only two-way guy right now. Only one of their 3 slots are filled. So there are a few spots that they could fill. They'll probably have one open two-way slot once Drew Smith returns. I think Drew's going to take one of the second two-way spot, but they'll have one left for maybe another standout in Summer League. But I think the main draw is the guys that are going to be on the roster. Like, what are they going to look like in Summer League? I know it's just Summer League, but you want to see if they are taking the next step, kind of what Jaime Jaquez did last year. I know it was a disappointing sophomore season for him, but in Summer League, he looked like a man amongst boys, right? He was getting like 25 points on like 10 shots. We've seen it with other guys too. Max Strus, before his big season when he became a starter, that Summer League, he was incredible. Like, he was making game winners. He was scoring 30 points. Like, he was one of the best players in Summer League. So you want to see Khalil, especially Khalil, be basically the best or one of the best players in Summer League this year. Because that will mean that he's graduated from that level and he's ready to take the next step in his career. And you want to see growth from Pella. You want to see growth from Kashad. You want to see Kasparis and what he can do. And then maybe, obviously there's always a guy that surprises us too that we're not mentioning that will stand out and fans will clamor for him to get a two-way. Look at Josh Christopher last year, Isaiah Stevens. There are always those guys that will kind of separate themselves from the others once games begin.
Okay, well, that's what we're looking for. So Summer League practice starts next week.
Started yesterday. Started Wednesday.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do the games start next week?
The game starts Saturday.
Okay, jeez.
Yeah.
So it's California, then Vegas, right?
Correct. They play Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday in San Francisco at the California Classic, which is just like I think 4 teams. And then every team in the NBA plays in Vegas starting July 10th. And the Heat will play at least 5 games there if they make the championship. Again, they'll play a 6th game.
You were just looking for anything positive you can find, aren't you?
Hey.
Nothing like spending July in Las Vegas because it won't be too hot at all. But
115 degrees. I looked at the forecast.
Yes, in the shade.
Yeah. Yeah.
But look, at least there are things to look for. There have been years where Summer League play meant nothing to us, but I think you're right. I think the points of who to look for, what to look for, are apparent. And as a Heat fan, you're going to want to see you're going to want to see growth. Look, as far as I'm concerned, I wish Jaime Jaquez could play another year in this because after last year, that almost seems like he needs a do-over.
Or Jovic, right? Even Jovic.
Yes.
I mean, he's into his 4th season, but even him, like, it would be fun to see him. Just throw the whole young core out there. See what they could do, right? Just throw everyone out there. But,
then one guy gets hurt, then it's all our fault. So
there's always
maybe
that.
not.
There's always that.
But we will keep an eye out on it. There will be things worth talking about. Make no mistake. We didn't even get into movement throughout the rest of the NBA. We'll talk about that later. We can also talk about how the East stacks up. Just even Achilles injuries and whether we think, is this a trend or not? There are all sorts of things to talk about. You won't get us necessarily every week because of all the news break, but you will get us. So stick with us during the offseason. Stick with us during summer and training. We will be around. Look for Anthony. Look for Barry. Look for all sorts of people on MiamiHerald.com. And keep it locked in with us, and we'll do our best to inform you. For Anthony Chang, I'm John Devine, and we will see you next time.